Section 17, Legal Hotline, Q&A, Part 4. Today's Fair Housing Rules and Regulations, 2026, Standard. Introduction: when policies, preferences, and property rights collide. At this stage in the course, you've developed a strong understanding of fair housing laws, advertising restrictions, ADA compliance, and how to handle real-world scenarios. Now we move into another layer of legal hotline situations, where policies, personal preferences, and property rights intersect with protected classes. This section ties directly back to Section 16, where we discussed how even small decisions, like wording in an ad, can create violations. Now we take that same concept and apply it to rules, access, and property use decisions. Because in 2026, many fair housing violations are not intentional. They happen when someone tries to enforce a rule that unintentionally targets a protected class. Scenario 1. Pool barrier requirements for families with children. Let's start with a policy that appears to be about safety. A property management company requires tenants with children to install a fence or comply with swimming pool barrier laws. At first glance, this might seem reasonable. After all, it's about protecting children. But here's the issue. Familial status, families with children, is a protected class. When a policy places additional requirements or burdens specifically on families with children, it may be considered discriminatory. In this case, requiring only tenants with children to install barriers is likely a violation of fair housing laws. This ties directly back to earlier sections. Policies must be neutral and applied equally, not targeted at specific groups, even with good intentions. Scenario 2. Advertising, single occupancy in a personal residence. Now let's move into a scenario involving a licensee's own property. A real estate agent owns a home and converts part of it into a rental unit. The agent believes they are exempt from fair housing laws because it is an owner-occupied property and advertises it as for a single person only. This is a violation. Even when exemptions may apply to homeowners, those exemptions do not apply when a real estate licensee is involved. A licensee cannot publish discriminatory advertising under any circumstance. This reinforces a key 2026 principle. As a licensee, you are always held to a higher standard. Scenario 3. Refusing access to a buyer with a disability. Let's move into a showing scenario. A buyer in a wheelchair wants to view a home. The seller refuses, stating they don't want the wheelchair on their carpet, even after being offered alternative solutions like scheduling another day. This is a clear violation. The Fair Housing Act prohibits denying access to a property based on disability. Refusing to allow a showing because of a wheelchair is considered making the property unavailable due to a protected class. This connects directly back to Section 10, ADA, and Section 7, Practice. Accessibility and equal opportunity are not optional. They are required. Scenario 4. Refusing to sell for use as a rehabilitation home. Now let's step into a more complex situation. A seller receives an offer, and the buyer intends to use the property as a drug and alcohol rehabilitation home. The seller is uncomfortable and wants to reject the offer. Can they? No. Recovering individuals with drug or alcohol addiction are considered part of the disability-protected class under fair housing laws. Refusing to sell based on that intended use is considered discrimination. This ties directly back to Section 3. Discrimination is not just about who the buyer is, but also about how the property will be used by protected individuals. Scenario 5. Seller, not required to add safety features for children. Now let's flip the situation. A buyer with children submits an offer requesting that the seller install a fence around a pool. The seller refuses and declines the offer. Is this a violation? Probably not. Fair housing laws do not require a seller to modify a property or add improvements for a buyer's specific needs. In this case, the buyer has options, such as installing the fence themselves or negotiating during the inspection period. This is an important distinction. Fair housing requires equal treatment, not automatic accommodation in every situation. Scenario 6. Disclosure of rehabilitation. Homes in the neighborhood. Finally, let's revisit disclosure, one of the most misunderstood areas. A seller is aware of a nearby drug rehabilitation group home and wonders if they must disclose it to potential buyers. Not only are they not required to disclose it, they are prohibited from doing so. Why? Because recovering individuals are part of a protected class under disability. Disclosing their presence could influence a buyer's decision in a discriminatory way. This ties directly back to Section 4 and Section 8. Disclosure must never involve protected class information. The pattern. Understanding the line between legal and illegal. If you step back and look at all of these scenarios, a clear pattern emerges. Violations occur when policies target protected classes, access is denied based on disability, decisions are influenced by who will live in the property, information about protected classes is disclosed, compliance occurs when rules are applied equally, access is provided to all, decisions are based on property, not people. Protected class information is kept out of the transaction, the 2026 professional standard. At this level, your role as a real estate professional is to recognize when a policy crosses the line, educate clients who may not understand the law, refuse to participate in discriminatory actions. Protect both your client and your license, because in today's market, fair housing is not just about avoiding violations, it's about actively ensuring equal opportunity in every transaction. Online discussion. Question 1. Why can safety policies still violate fair housing laws? Answer. Because if they target or impose additional burdens on a protected class, such as families with children, they may be considered discriminatory. Question 2. Why are licensees held to a higher standard in advertising? Answer. Because they are professionals subject to licensing laws and cannot rely on exemptions that may apply to private individuals. Question 3. What is the key issue with disclosing group homes or rehabilitation facilities? Answer. It reveals the presence of a protected class and may influence decisions in a discriminatory way.